What is good, guys? It's Ray J back with another video, and this one breaks down what's going on with Tesla, SPY, Nvidia, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I'm break down what's going on with the economic calendar thus far, what's happening to the markets, what you should be watching for as time progresses. But before I break anything down all this information, before I get into any more details, let me just mention a couple of things. I am firstly not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Webull link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Webull, the link down below, and deposit any amount of money to the account, you are guaranteed up to 6 free stocks. If you deposit $500, you're guaranteed 20 free stocks plus 6 months of level 2 data. And putting in $25,000 or more guarantees you 70 free stocks plus 12 months of level 2 data. This offer ends in just about 2 days from now, so check it out before they run out. Anyways, let's break down what's going on with the market. I just want to mention that when it comes to SPY so far, there could be an attempt for this thing to go a little bit higher before we see the market possibly turn, but this is going to depend on if we end up rejecting at this next level of resistance. I'll be breaking down more information about this over the next couple of minutes. But just as a reminder, we have some data coming out for tomorrow morning. 30 minutes after the market opens at 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern Standard Time, we have the NAHB Housing Market Index report coming out. The consensus is 36 and the forecast is 32. So let's hope that this is somewhere in the middle. And then at 11:30 a.m., we have the 3-month and the 6-month bill auction reports. We'll be watching to see how this affects the markets. Now, the fear and greed index right now is at greed, and we're seeing other indicators at these extremes, at extreme greed throughout the markets. And although the market's been pumping quite a bit, I wouldn't necessarily say there's a sign of the market potentially like breaking down yet or officially. What is important is we did close below 470 on SPY, which is a sign of weakness, but we need to see a follow through move to turn more bearish. Now, I just want to call out that when you zoom out of the chart, the 4 hour has turned a bit more bearish. And if you look at the daily time frame, the daily is also starting to lose a little bit of momentum as we have two bearish looking daily candlesticks. So this could be signaling a little like retracement that could be coming as the market's very overbought and it's been pumping for quite a while. And considering that we've been up for about 7 straight weeks, 7 weeks in a row of just nonstop green, it wouldn't surprise me if you see this thing just retrace a little bit. So if you look at this wick, this could have been just more liquidity. Once again, they're grabbing liquidity just above this high right here. This is where we had previous stops. Not to mention the 467 high, which is where we had even more stops. They triggered them and they could be getting ready to let the market kind of retrace a bit. But I just want to call out some levels and how this could end up panning out. So there are two possibilities, guys. For the bearish case, what could happen is we get one more attempt for a liquidity grab. We need to see a lower high be established. On SpyWatch 470, if you break this, there is technically a gap very close to 472. Could we push one more time to fill the gap before we come back down? Or will the market try to keep going? Because if we break 474, if we break this resistance, I could turn bullish, and I think that we could push even higher to these higher levels if we end up breaking this resistance. Now, do I think that's probable? Right now, looking at the current charts, it is a possibility, but I'm leaning a little bit more towards this orange trend line right here, where we might actually see this thing pop a little bit and start to slow down, especially because we did see a big shift in the charts so far. So watch and see if there's a lower high established. Do we establish like a much lower high from here, maybe like up here? Look for the little pop before the market starts to sink. I wouldn't be surprised if we see SPY cool off in a very healthy fashion, all the way back down to 467 at least. I also want to mention that when you zoom out of the charts and you look at the weekly, we've been pumping like crazy on the weekly. It still looks very strong, but I wouldn't be surprised if this wick was just a sign of liquidity being grabbed and for this to, come back up towards the gap fill before coming down. Now, the 20 EMA is going to be a key supports to be watching for, okay? Where the green trend line happens to be. Watch that very carefully. We could see this thing pop and then drop just very temporarily, and we could be testing this green trend line very soon. I think that this is going to be tested right here, this EMA, and then we could see how the market holds from here before we end up continuing lower. But once again, guys, watch for these two possibilities, but I favor the orange line right over here a bit more, where we kind of like pop a bit and come back down. And I think that that's very likely looking at the current trend. The market might push a little bit tomorrow morning, then start selling off as time goes on. We might continue to sell off as we approach like Tuesday and Wednesday. I wouldn't be surprised if the market does that. It just cools off a bit. But I'm not turning into a mega bear, guys. This is just like a very, very healthy little retracement before the market tries to bounce again later on. But for now, just focus on the next 1 to 2 moves ahead of us, and that's what I see to be very probable. As far as the triple Q goes, okay, uh, when it comes to the triple Q, we're technically bullish on the QQQ because this yellow trend line, guys, see the yellow line? It's still holding the QQQ up. Now, could we push higher? Yes. I think the QQQ could make its way up to 406 to 408. Just a little bit more liquidity could be grabbed before this thing kind of turns. I think that Apple could play a big role in why this thing may turn, maybe Nvidia too. And we might see this thing start to retrace just a little bit if we do end up breaking the yellow trend line. Now, am I bearish officially? Not yet on the QQQ. We need to see the yellow trend line break. But I anticipate that there's a strong possibility that this thing may pop a little bit more, and then we might end up breaking this yellow trend line as we approach this 408 resistance. We might turn right here and start cooling off just a bit, making our way back down towards these levels. So a little pop and drop is still very probable before we end up retracing to 404 at least, maybe even 402. This could be a very, very healthy looking retracement before the market bounces again. So watch for that very, very carefully. As far as Tesla goes, Tesla looks strong in my opinion. There's no sign of Tesla breaking down yet. I think Tesla's going to outperform the market, at least from a technical standpoint. Please note that there's also another factor that affects Tesla, and that's the news. I can't always predict the news, but I think that Tesla could make one more attempt to break out of this wedge right here. We have a wedge forming. I don't know if it's going to come down first and then pop up, or if it just pops from open. It could push and get very close to this 260 area, then very close to where this orange trend line happens to be, which happens to align with this 260 resistance. So we have a confluence of resistance. That's where Tesla could turn and start downtrending just a bit and retest the yellow trend line, bringing it back down into the 250s. I wouldn't be surprised if Tesla kind of pops and drops like this. If it breaks the yellow trend line, we could even be dropping lower. But I think a very healthy retracement is coming, and I think that Tesla might pop a little bit more before we see a slight little rejection. I will change my view, however, and turn super bullish if we just break and hold 260 and we just fail to reject over there. So it could just keep going. We'll just have to wait and see how it looks, and we're going to be watching our technicals just to be safe. So it could push more, but watch and see the resistance up there. On Nvidia stock, we have another flag forming. We could get a breakout from this flag. One more attempt to grab liquidity between 495 and about 500 before this thing turns back down. We see Nvidia cool off in a very healthy fashion, back down towards this hourly imbalance around this 483 area. So I think a little pop and drop is coming on Nvidia over the next couple of trading days. I find this to be very probable because of this, zone of resistance up here. With the flags forming, we're seeing them basically grabbing liquidity, building up this liquidity, then just kind of like popping this thing back up. That's what I think is very probable, and that's what could end up perpetuating. As far as Apple goes, I think Apple could follow the trend, except Apple's looking a little bit weaker to me. We have this channel that's forming on Apple. It is going to attempt to go higher again. We could backtest like 197.5, even push up higher. I wouldn't be surprised if Apple tries to push up and tries to like fill this gap. We could attempt to get close to like the 198 area, then reject very close to where these wicks happen to be, and then come back down towards where the channel happens to be back to this 195 area. So I think ultimately Apple will come down to 195 this week before Friday. Before it comes down to 195, there could be one more pop coming, a little pump like this, some sideways price action for a day or so before this thing comes back down. So make sure you're prepared for that. I find this very probable for Apple, in my opinion. Now, with that being said, especially after it hit 200, let me just go over a couple of others very, very quickly, very shortly. SoFi is starting to turn bearish on the 4-hour time frame. Could we grab some liquidity around 9.73 to 10? Yes, but I think very close to 10 is where it's going to reject. We came very close to that. The rejection could even be starting already from this wick right over here. A pop and drop or a drop from here looks probable. Watch 8.92, then 8.39. For the IWM or the Russell 2000, this thing attempted to bounce, but look at this. This is starting to turn a little bearish. Could push up, back test 200, 198 to 200, then come back down to 194 as we have this gap to fill. A pop and drop is very probable on the Russell 2000 just for the short term, but don't forget, guys, I'm still very bullish on the Russell for 2024. For Microsoft, we could see this thing attempts to go higher. Well, this really depends. I mean, if it breaks the 50 EMA, then yes, we could push a little higher before we drop. If it breaks 371.5, then watch for 375, then rejection. Or if it fails to break this 50 EMA, then it could just reject from here and come back down towards 362. So it depends on if it rejects here. If it rejects here, it drops. If it breaks it, it could pop one more time, then drop. But I think that there's a good chance it might reject. So just be very careful with Microsoft from there. For AMD, this, in my opinion, is showing some signs of turning. You guys can see that it has this divergence, not to mention the fact that the MACD is turned a bit more bearish. And on the daily time frame, on the daily, although this thing pushed a bit, we're losing a little bit of momentum after getting two bearish looking candlesticks. So it might pop again. If it breaks 142, I could turn bullish. It could push higher. My gut tells me it's going to fail to do so and come back down towards 136 and even a little bit below that. I do favor the downside a bit more, but just to be safe, guys, watch your levels. Now, the VIX is showing a little bit of life on the daily time frame, but it hasn't broken our daily 20 EMA yet. So I'm not officially like super bullish on the VIX. I need to wait for confirmation. Same thing with the SQQQ, excuse me. But on the dollar index, the dollar is showing some life on the daily. It could push back up to 103 plus and drag the market down a bit. Coinbase is showing some weakness. The daily looks a little bearish. If it keeps sinking down, we're going to be looking for a move back down towards the breakout at 142. Google is kind of flat right now, hasn't officially broken this resistance I wanted to break. If Google could break 135, it could turn a little bullish and try to like fill this gap. And then push up higher towards like 137, but we're still below 135. It failed to break that. If it rejects from this resistance, watch for a move back down to 131, right where that wick happens to be. Amazon's at 150, it's at resistance. Still looks decent on the daily. There's no sign of Amazon breaking down yet, so I'm not really bearish on Amazon yet. There could be some big news coming out for it. So we're going to be watching to see if Amazon can close above 150. If it manages to do so, at least this time around, there could be more upside coming. Amazon's looking pretty strong compared to the market. Meta is looking kind of in the middle, very flat right now. It's been very flat. It's going to likely retest 330, then bounce and just continue to trade sideways in this range. No sign of it breaking down yet. I'm not going to turn bearish quite yet or anything like that. So that's what I have for this video, guys. Hopefully this video was helpful, guys. I try to be very unbiased when looking at different tickers. For instance, like Amazon is not looking too bearish to me yet, but some tickers look like they could turn, such as like SPY and many others. So the overall market could get another pump higher. The market could pump a little bit more, but I think there's going to be an ultimate drop coming this week, and I just wanted to warn you guys about that based off the signals I have. I'll be breaking down more specific details tomorrow. I just want to keep this Sunday video very short, very brief, and very simple for everyone out there. So please take care, do what you have to do, guys, and I'll see you guys very soon in the next video. The market to the moon because the long term is still incredibly bright, and peace out.